We're going to be really young, and I think we're going to be really exciting, and that's the direction that we're going. And it's also, hopefully it's something that leads into a relatively quick turnaround.
That was Rockets general manager Rafael Stone just a short time ago at Toyota Center as the reset has begun with the Houston Rockets. Good evening, everybody. Welcome yet again to the Fox 26 Sports Stream. We appreciate you joining us. As always, I'm Sal Manine, sports producer here at Fox 26. There's plenty of ways you can get in on the show. I realize we got started a couple minutes late, so appreciate you bearing with us as we got a very busy evening to get through. Again, you can find us on our YouTube channel, on our Facebook page, or as always on our website, that is fox26houston.com. You just heard from the Rockets general manager. Of course, the NBA draft last night, Houston with the second overall pick. That ended up being the first of 4 first-round draft choices the Rockets made. 3 of their draftees are already in Houston, and we're at Toyota Center, so we'll hear from them. Of course, the Texans started training camp, and they started training camp with the guy who doesn't want to be here actually on the field, and nobody knows if he's actually going to be allowed to play in games for the whole season, if he does play for the Texans or for another team. Of course, we're talking about Deshaun Watson, so we'll get into that. Plenty to hear from the Texans brass, and of course, the players with what's going on as camp is now 3 days old. And then just a couple hours ago, the trade deadline officially came and went in Major League Baseball. The Astros making just one move today. Remember, they had already made a couple earlier in the week, completely remade their bullpen on the fly, adding 4 new relievers. So we'll get you caught up on all that as things roll along. So again, Texans, Rockets, Astros, it's a very, very busy time in the Houston sports scene. All right, so I mentioned the trade deadline was at 3 o'clock for Major League Baseball. Tons of big moves all over the league. Tons of big names on the move. Lots of all-stars, names you will recognize. Of course, the Dodgers with perhaps the biggest splash of this deadline, landing not only Max Scherzer from the Washington Nationals, but Trey Turner, the shortstop, heading out to L.A., who just have no regard whatsoever for the pocketbook, for payroll tax, for luxury tax, for anything, is they're just blowing through it all to try to repeat as champs, or if you ask a lot of people, and you can count me in that group, actually win a legit World Series for the first time, because I don't know how much you can really say that 60-game sprint last year totally counts. But the Dodgers making the biggest splash, plenty of big names all over the American League on the move. The Astros, they didn't get the all-stars, but they got the pieces that they felt they needed. I mentioned they remade their bullpen on the fly, adding 4 relievers this past week, and you see them right there. Kendall Graveman and Yimi Garcia are both former closers. Graveman for the Mariners, Garcia for the Marlins. Rafael Montero was with Seattle. He does have experience closing. And then today, the latest deal that the Astros made shortly before the trade deadline, getting from Cleveland right-hander Phil Maton in exchange for Miles Straw, which is somewhat surprising since Miles Straw was the everyday starter at center field for the Astros right now. But GM James Click felt like this team still needed to do more to remake their bullpen, as now you see those guys all kind of jump up in pecking order ahead of pretty much all the Astros relievers outside of Ryan Presley. And that's something that James Click touched on earlier this afternoon when he met with reporters on Zoom and was breaking down just what he and his staff were trying to get done as they were approaching today's 3 o'clock deadline. Here's James Click.
Into this deadline, we felt very, very good about our offense, and we felt very good about our starting pitching. And I think that Ryan Presley has been one of the best relievers in the game, and an all-star at that. We felt like the area that we needed to address was the middle of that bullpen. Certainly, there are guys that we have that we brought in because we think that they can get big outs. But I think looking around the roster, that was the area that we felt like needed the most attention, and also could get the most attention without sacrificing the long-term goals of the franchise. So we feel a lot better about our ability to bridge from the starting pitching back to Ryan Presley. if our offense continues to perform at the level that it has, if our starting pitching continues to perform at the level that it has, I think we've put together a roster that should be very, very capable of competing for a World Series championship.
And look, we've talked about it ad nauseum on this program that if there was an Achilles heel with this Astros team, and really you could say this going back the last handful of years, including 2017 when they won it all, if there was one weak spot with the Astros, it was the bullpen. And of course, this week started by that rearing its ugly head in perhaps the worst way possible. One of the worst regular season losses you've seen in quite some time for the Astros, blowing a 7-0 lead on the road in Seattle and ended up losing that game as the Mariners stormed back and just about everybody who the Astros brought in out of the pen struggled and could not get outs. We do want to point out one little nugget from that. If you were watching that game, you saw Brooks Raley gives up a grand slam, and then the next batter he faces, he hits J.P. Crawford. Now, he and Dusty Baker said he just lost control. He didn't have control of his breaking stuff, especially. It was not intentional, but tempers flared on the field in Seattle. And just a short time ago, Major League Baseball officially suspending Brooks Raley for 3 games and also handing out a 1-game suspension to Dusty Baker as a result of Raley throwing at J.P. Crawford. But that was how the week started. And while it may not have been the whole reason that Houston went out and remade its bullpen, it only reinforced for James Click and the rest of the front office what they had to do. And that's why, as I mentioned, they go out and they get not 1, not 2, but 4 different relief pitchers, 3 of whom in the case of Graveman, Garcia, and Montero have experience closing. And Graveman and Garcia, especially this season, no issues at all in terms of being put into high leverage situations. That's not going to be something new for them. And it also gives Dusty Baker and pitching coach Brent Strom plenty of options in terms of how they want to compile 27 outs. And if they have to pitch Ryan Presley, say, back-to-back days or use him 3 days in a row, then maybe you can go to a Kendall Graveman, who is closing for the Mariners and has a sub-1 ERA this year. Don't forget, Seattle overperforming, one of the biggest surprises in baseball. They're just a game out of that second wild card spot. Hard to see if they stay there after they traded away their closer, but Kendall Graveman was getting it done on a team that was fighting for a playoff spot. Yimi Garcia was closing games for the Miami Marlins and has pitched in high leverage situations. So Dusty Baker says his plan is to stick with Ryan Presley. You just heard James Click say Ryan Presley's an all-star. That's the bridge that they're trying to build. But if anything should happen or if they need to give Presley a day off, they now have plenty of options. Now, in order to get Phil Maton from the Indians, who that was the deadline deal that the Astros made in the final minutes before 3 o'clock today, they gave up Miles Straw, who was their everyday center fielder. And while he doesn't have the pop in his bat, everybody knows just how fast he is, what a threat he is on the base path. And if you look over the last month and a half, as I pull it up here, so in the last 45 games that Miles Straw has played, because he got off to kind of a slow start. Remember, he and Chas McCormick have been platooning the center field spot. But the last 6 weeks or so, Miles Straw hitting .303 with an on-base percentage of .388, 9 extra base hits in that time, and 11 stolen bases, and was only caught once. And so that's what you have to sacrifice in order to go out and get a Phil Maton, who on paper you may look and go, this guy has a ERA that's a bit higher than you like. Did you really have to give up your everyday center fielder? But James Glick says he's got swing and miss stuff and that they wanted to bolster that bullpen. And Miles Straw is not going to be the reason that the Astros do or do not win a World Series. It's going to be they need that starting pitching to hold up, and they need this lineup to continue to be the best offense in baseball. And so when you have that luxury of having a lineup that mashes, you can make hard decisions like parting ways with Miles Straw or Abraham Toro, who they had to give up earlier in the week in order to go get Kendall Graveman. Now, Dusty Baker was asked before today's game. Again, he's back in his old stomping grounds. The Astros getting set to take on the Giants tonight, 8:45 first pitch Central Time. And the Giants making a big move today as they got Chris Bryant from the Cubs in their big deadline deal. But Dusty was asked about the fact that he does not have Miles Straw and his speed, his athleticism, and his defense to put out there anymore, and would Dusty have preferred that the Stros had hung on to Miles. Here's what Dusty Baker had to tell reporters.
Can't answer that. I mean, I don't think that's, anybody's business. So, I'm not the decision maker. So sometimes you have to do what the organization asks, but sometimes you don't have a choice.
So Dusty going with Kyle Tucker in center field today. He said that was a decision he was going with even before the Astros dealt Miles Straw, because he wants to get Yordan Alvarez into the lineup since they're in a National League park. So they lose the designated hitter. So left to right, it's going to be Yordan, Kyle Tucker, and Michael Brantley in right field as the Astros are playing some interleague games this weekend, first in San Francisco, and then, of course, they pay a visit to Chavez Ravine to take on the Dodgers. First time they will play at L.A. with fans in the stands. So we will see how that goes, especially given the news that the Dodgers made some major deals and big splashes at the trade deadline. Now, the plan right now is Chas McCormick is going to get the bulk of playing time in center field. Obviously, it looks like if they have to, they're not afraid to throw Kyle Tucker out there. We should point out that James Glick this afternoon, when we were on a Zoom call with him, said, no, we like what Kyle Tucker does in right field. He's one of the better defenders in right field. So we're not planning on putting him in center. And then a couple hours later, Dusty Baker submits his lineup card, and there's Kyle Tucker playing in center. But again, that's also, you're playing in a National League park, so you always got to get creative when you lose the DH spot. But the Astros did also call up one of their hottest hitters from the Skeeters. Jake Myers has had his contract selected, and the Stros are trying to get him out to the West Coast as soon as they can so that they can theoretically have him available this weekend. And James Glick says he's got athleticism, he's got speed, he does a lot of things similarly to Miles Straw. And just don't forget, perhaps the reason you didn't hear much of Jake Myers before this year was last year an entire year was wiped out for a lot of minor leaguers and developmental players. But this year at the AAA level, Jake Myers has been raking, hitting over 300, double digits home runs, solid defender in center field. So the Stros feel confident in their organizational depth that they were able to deal Miles Straw and remake their bullpen. Now, if you look at the guys that they brought in, there is one common denominator, and that is they're all right-handed pitchers. And right now, coming out of the pen, the only options in terms of left-handed pitchers are Blake Taylor and Brooks Raley, who has had his own struggles this year. James Glick was asked about the lack of lefties in the pen and whether or not he was trying to get a deal done to bring in some left-handed relief pitching prior to today's deadline.
The goal to make sure that we had options to get out left-handed batters and not necessarily to get a left-handed thrower to do that. And beyond that, once you get to the playoffs, it changes the way that your roster is used. And we feel like we have a roster that should be able to get lefties and righties out. Beyond that, the arms that we got, while they might all be right-handed and maybe they're a little bit better against righties, all of these guys have the stuff to get lefties out.
So again, the Stros going by what the numbers tell them, and that you talk to a lot of people around baseball, especially in this day and age, and they look more at stuff than they do at especially some of the traditional numbers in terms of, well, what's the guy's ERA or his win-loss record? And James Glick feels like he got 4 guys at the deadline, or this week in the days leading up to the deadline. He's got guys who all have good stuff. And again, we've seen throughout this season, if there was a sore spot for the Astros, it was the bullpen. And so you had 4 new faces, 4 fresh arms, 4 different guys. And so it's a completely remade bullpen for the Astros, who we should point out, even though they didn't make the big name deals like so many of their American League counterparts. I mean, we saw the Tampa Bay Rays add Nelson Cruz, an all-star. Kyle Schwarber goes to the Red Sox. The Yankees add Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo. The Astros are the best team in the American League. And on paper right now, even though, yes, they did not land at Craig Kimbrell, who's heading to the south side of Chicago to play for the White Sox. They did not add a Max Scherzer. they still have all the tools that puts them right on par, if not ahead of the other teams in the American League. And that's also, I think, why you saw so many of these big name players and former All-Stars being moved at the deadline. Is it is very wide open in baseball, especially in the American League. There is not one team that if you look at, you say, well, they are demonstrably better than anybody the Astros would have to face. I think head to head, you're still saying you definitely like them over the likes of the Yankees, the Blue Jays, Oakland. Obviously, Tampa, we know with the way they use their pitching staff, if they get in, they can be a difficult out, but that's not a team that if you're Houston, you go, well, we can't beat that team. And Boston, with their starting pitching, they're putting a lot of onus on Chris Sale coming back from surgery and being Chris Sale. Otherwise, that's still a team that the Stros can go head-to-head with and possibly take it for the American League pennant. So perhaps that was part of the calculus for why the Astros were in on a lot of the deals for these big-name free agents, but did not ultimately come away with a Kimbrel, a Scherzer, or somebody of that ilk. All right, let's transition now and talk a little bit about the Rockets. Again, we started with Rafael Stone pointing out just how young this Rockets team is, and that's because they brought in 4 guys who are all teenagers to go along with, outside of, say, John Wall, Eric Gordon, Daniel House. A lot of returning guys for this Rockets team are all very, very young, as they are now firmly entrenched in a rebuild, a reset, a retool, whatever term you want to ascribe to it, as they try to figure out what the post-James Harden era looks like. And it all started at number 2 when the Rockets picked Jalen Green, a 19-year-old who played in the G League for the G League Ignite. We talked to David Resnick, one of the G League announcers, on the show a couple weeks ago, and he gave us the lowdown. He was calling all those games for the G League bubble and said Jalen Green is the one who stood out. Jalen Green is the one who made you go, whoa, that's different. That's a play that not too many other guys can make. Special player in terms of athleticism and in terms of where his game is for being only 19 years old. Here's what Rafael Stone had to say about the Rockets' first draft pick, 2nd overall, 19-year-old Jalen Green, the newest member of the Houston Rockets.
Jalen is a uniquely blessed guy. He's a transcendent athlete. He just is. He runs faster than people, and he's athletic in a super functional way. It's not up and down. It's not rigid. It's super fluid. I have no idea how high he jumps, but it's insanely high. And he can handle the ball and he can shoot. Normally people that athletic aren't as skilled because they can just rely on their athleticism. And so we think that combination of things, of tools, just makes him an extraordinarily exciting prospect.
Now, again, you can peruse the internet, ESPN, Fox Sports, any sports network, even just going on social media, and you'll find an answer to whatever question or whatever argument you want to make in terms of who the Rockets should draft, who they should have drafted, who got the best draft haul last night, who's going to end up being a bust. The truth is you really don't know. I mean, I read enough things in the weeks leading up to last night that Jalen Green is the best, has the highest ceiling, and is the best player in this draft, and he's going to be the guy who's going to be the superstar and a top 10 player in the NBA, to other things that said, oh, well, he skipped college, he went right to the G League, he only played a handful of games, that's not enough to base it on. He's a rotational guy at best. You could say the same thing about Cade Cunningham. There were some people that are saying he's the best prospect since LeBron. He's Ben Simmons with a jumper. He's Luka, but a little bit smaller. Other guys say, yeah, he's good, but he's not that special. He doesn't elicit the same type of reaction that other number 1 overall picks. Evan Mobley, Jalen Suggs. You go on down the list, and no matter how you want to spin it, you can find a coach, a scout, a writer, anybody who will be able to say, yeah, that guy is the second coming, or you know what, that guy's going to turn out to be nothing special at all. So the truth is, you really don't know. So the Rockets are banking on the homework that they did and the fact that Jalen Green has already shown a lot in just a short period of time and at such a young age that his athleticism and his maturity for only being a teenager is ultimately what's going to shine through. Now, Jalen was asked last night, shortly after he was picked, on just what he thinks people will say years from now when they look at this draft, which a lot of people say is so loaded and so much talent, especially right there at the top. What are people going to say about the fact that the Rockets chose him with their top pick and he was the second overall pick and what people think could end up being a special draft? Here's Jalen Green.
They're going to say it's a great choice because the goals that I have for myself, plan on reaching them. So if everything goes right, they're gonna say that.
What are those?
Great choice. Being
What are
rookie
those?
Rookie of the year, all-star, all defense, max contract. We doing it big.
And Jalen Green certainly did it big on the fashion department last night. He was rocking the diamond, shiny, pinstriped Balmain suit. And he was also dressed to the nines again today in his introductory news conference up at Toyota Center. Now, he was just one of 4 draft picks that the Rockets made. They took him second overall. Then the Rockets actually traded back into the first round because they were always picking 23rd and 24th in this draft as a result of previous trades, but they traded 2 future first rounders. And we want to point out those first rounders are reportedly not any of the Brooklyn Nets picks that the Rockets got as a result of trading James Harden. They were lottery protected picks, so they were not going to be high draft picks anyways, but they traded future picks in order to get to number 16, where they took Alperen Şengün, a 19-year-old out of Turkey who is the MVP of the Turkish league, which is one of the strongest leagues outside of the NBA. It's right up there. Most people would probably say the Spanish league and then the Turkish league in terms of the power structure of the European leagues. And he's a 6'11", 6'9", between 6'9" and 6'11", depending on what you look at, big man who already has a very advanced game on the offensive side of things, obviously still has to bulk up, still has to adapt to playing defense at an NBA level. But he was a guy who a lot of draft picks had going in the top 10. And as he slipped, the Rockets were able to make a trade and move up to get Alperen Şengün at 16. Then at 23, they take another foreign player who plays in one of those highly regarded European leagues from Real Madrid, Usman Garuba, who was not at Toyota Center today because right now he's in Tokyo playing for the Spanish national team, which is actually one of the better international teams out there. And he's playing against grown men every day in his pro league, and he's playing against them now in the Olympics. And then at 24, the Rockets took Josh Christopher, a lightning quick guard out of Arizona State. And last time the Rockets, of course, had a guard out of Arizona State, things turned out pretty well for them in that regard. So let's hear from all those new guys. Again, 3 of them were at Toyota Center today. Usman Garuba, obviously not, because he is playing in the Olympics in Spain. Here's what they all had to say about reaching their NBA dream and becoming members of the Houston Rockets.
I mean, I'm here, so, I mean, walking into the arena, I was like, wow, I'm really here. But, like, just since the whole time I got my name called, I was like, wow, I'm going to the NBA. Like, wow, I'm going to the NBA. It's everything you worked for, and then the moment's here. But, like, I don't know. It's weird, but, you know, I'm just excited.
Say my comment.
I don't think it'll probably hit me until we get into that practice. That feeling walking the stage was crazy. It was like kind of like you kind of just blacked out. It was like a surreal moment. But yeah, I don't think it's gonna hit me until we get to the practice facility. So working out and playing.
Ben ilk kez Amerika'ya geldim bu yıl.
This is my first time in the United States, and I've been to many other different cities before coming to Houston. And from what I've seen from the plane, it looks like a very nice city. And I'm very excited. I cannot wait. I'm very excited, and I think everything will go well.
And of course, we will have much more on the Rockets and their newest members of the team tonight at Fox 26 News at 9. Did want to get one comment from General Manager Rafael Stone about Usman Garuba, who could obviously not be there because of the Olympics.
Garuba, I've already talked about it. I think he's the best. He's the best defender. I personally think in the world outside the NBA at and he's 19 years old, and he's defensively. He'll guard your center, he'll guard your point guard. He's disruptive. He gets steals. He blocks shots. He rebounds. I think he potentially could be really, really impactful on that side of the ball. His offensive game, I think, is a little bit more in development, but he did some really interesting things when he was playing with players his own age. He put the ball on the ground a little bit, full court a little bit. His shooting has really improved in the last couple of years. And so I think he's just a really intriguing prospect.
So again, the Rockets are going to be young, and it all starts in less than 10 days. That is when their first summer league game begins, and the plan right now is for at least those three guys who are already here in Houston to start playing immediately in the summer league. Obviously, we'll have to see what happens with Garuba given his Olympic commitments and traveling back and forth. But in less than 10 days, you will get your first look in actual on-court action with the newest members of the Rockets. All right, let's talk some Texans before we get out of here. Of course, training camp began this week. First practice was on Wednesday, and it did feature Deshaun Watson out there on the field going through drills on both offense and defense. Yes, at one point when cameras were not allowed to take any recordings or pictures or anything, but at one point Deshaun put on a number 23 practice or defensive jersey and was out there playing in the secondary. Now, obviously, they're not in full pad, so it's not like he's running over the middle and tackling guys or hitting anybody or anything like that, but something you certainly don't see. I can't remember seeing it. Talking to Mark Berman, who's been doing this a lot longer than I have, he's never seen something like that. And one thing that none of us have really seen before is a player demanding a trade, yet still showing up, going through the drills. Deshaun has not spoken to reporters yet, so we don't know what exactly his mindset is in all this, but his team, certainly the coaching staff and new general manager Nick Caserio, offered their thoughts. You're going to find, not shockingly, they were not overly insightful, but here's what they had to say about the start of camp and the fact that right now, at least, Deshaun Watson is out there running through drills, as technically he is still, as of now, a member of the Houston Texans.
Expecting him to be here, just like all the other people that was here, and we were no surprise. So it was just business as usual with everybody here.
Are you concerned about the distraction that this does?
Has not been a distraction at all. It's been a very professional about everything, just like all the guys that have been here at all. It's just been business as usual.
Cully was asked, why is Deshaun, who went through the workout on the practice field, when he's asked to be traded and doesn't want to be here? Deshaun
is a Texan, and basically he's here. Everybody's here. Everybody's required to be here. Everybody that's under contract is here, and they're all here. And basically what training camp is for right now is for us to find out. I got 50 different guys on this football team that wasn't here last year. And when we come in here and to focus on what we need to do during training camp, then that's what we're doing.
Like Cully, GM Nick Caserio doesn't see Watson as a distraction from his personal point of view.
I don't want to speak for anybody else, but it really hasn't been a distraction. And, we don't think it will be a distraction. Again, I think our staff and players have done a great job of focusing on the things that, are germane and relevant to them, which is their individual performance and their individual job. So, again, I don't want to speak for too many people, but I would say, to answer your question, it really hasn't been a distraction.
And it was just a whole lot more of that. Anytime any of the players, or certainly David Culley or Nick Caserio, were asked about Deshaun Watson. Let's get one more in from the general manager about Deshaun Watson and having him here, what the plan is for him, what his future will be in the immediacy in terms of what kind of reps he's getting, and then long-term in terms of if and when he gets traded and just how things play out. Here's Nick Caserio, a little bit more on Deshaun Watson.
Say my comments about that, or he reported for training camp the other day. I know the league put out a statement and made some comments about where they are in that process. And again, I think from our perspective, it's a day-to-day endeavor. We're going to take the information, we're going to process that, we're respectful of everybody and everything that's involved. So we'll kind of take it one day at a time, and ultimately we're going to do what we feel is best, for the Houston Texans. I'm sure there'll be some questions. I know there's been a lot of speculation about what the Texans will do, about a lot of different scenarios. I mean, quite frankly, a lot of it's speculation. I'm not going to comment about a bunch of rumors about what we've done, what we're going to do, what the plan is. He's here. He's been in meetings. He went through the conditioning test, just like however many other players that we had that were here. So, again, we're going to take it one day at a time, Ed. We're going to do what we feel is best on a day-to-day basis.
And again, the last few days, again, this morning, anytime David Culley was asked what's next for Deshaun, he was not running all the snaps with the first team offense. They were giving those to Tyrod Taylor. But in terms of what is your plans for him, especially as they start to transition into full pads and full contact, and everything is, we'll take it day by day. The players, when asked, Deshaun's a great person. They know him, they talk, they love him, and that's it. Nobody gets into anything in terms of the football aspect. And then, of course, we still don't know off the field what's going on. The NFL put out a statement at the beginning of the week saying essentially they're still investigating. We know HPD is still investigating, but as of right now, they do not have cause to suspend Deshaun Watson, to put him on any kind of commissioner's exempt list. We know that there are 22 civil lawsuits against the Texans quarterback alleging sexual assault and inappropriate conduct. But as of right now, there's nothing in the NFL's power to keep him off the field. We also know the Texans have been willing to listen to trade offers for Deshaun Watson since before the draft. Just because of the unresolved off-the-field stuff, teams aren't going to make an offer in earnest until they know just what's going to happen. Because if you're the GM of another team and you end up having to give up multiple first-round picks and or young, solid players, guys who are recent first or second-round picks, if you have to give that up to get a Deshaun Watson and then you find out later this year or next year that he's been suspended for some period of time, you're going to have a lot of questions that you're going to have to answer with your ownership in terms of the deals that you made. So right now, it's just a very awkward situation where the Texans are in limbo and don't exactly know what's going to happen with regards to when Deshaun Watson is traded. But by all indications, we know right now he does not want to be a long-term member of the Houston Texans, even though he's out there every morning on Kirby taking snaps and going through drills just like the rest of his teammates. All right, one more before we get out of here, and that is the guy who right now is atop the depth chart at quarterback. And if he stays healthy, the Texans expect him to take most of the snaps, at least early on in the season, as QB1, and that's Tyrod Taylor, who spoke to reporters for the first time about being in camp and being the Texans' starting quarterback, at least as of right now.
I feel comfortable being on the field. It's been a good 3 days. We've done a lot of good things on offense and continue to keep correcting and building as training camps continue to keep progressing. I know guys are eager to get out and get full speed 11 on 11 reps, and we've been able to compete at a high level the last 3 days. So just taking it one day at a time, focusing on getting better, and I think we're making good strides in that area.
So that was Tyrod Taylor, and when asked about Deshaun, he said there's no problems. He and Deshaun have known each other for years. They talk on and off the field about football life, all kinds of things. So it's just business as usual. Everybody's just going through the reps, going through their regular practice routine, but there's very little that is routine about this situation, which will continue to unfold in the weeks leading up to the regular season and possibly even beyond, depending on how soon some team is willing to offer a treasure trove of draft picks, or there is some type of off-the-field legal resolution either for or against Deshaun that would dictate what exactly may or may not happen as far as the Texans moving on from their former franchise quarterback. All right, that's going to do it for us tonight. I know we had a lot to cover, and we didn't probably get into all the nuts and bolts of it. So that's why if you want to find out anything more on the Rockets and the draft, on the Astros and the deadline, on the Texans and what's going on at training camp, we should also point out that local kid, the Woodlands' very own College Park alum, Quentin Grimes, who, of course, led U of H to the Final Four this past season. He was a first-round pick, taken 25th overall by the New York Knicks. We will hear from him tonight at Fox 26 News at 9. For all the updates, though, be sure to follow our sports director, Mark Berman, on Twitter. He is at Mark Berman, Fox 26. You can always join us on our Facebook page, on our YouTube channel, or on our website, fox26houston.com. That's going to do it for tonight. We will be back next week. We're going back to the normal time, 7 o'clock on Tuesdays, as we will break down everything that is going on in the world of Houston sports. For all of us here at Fox 26, I'm Sal Manine. Thanks for joining. We'll see you again.